Hello and welcome back to Honors Bio. So today we're going to talk about pedigrees and how do you read a pedigree and determine, whether a trait, the inheritance of a trait through pedigrees. They're really what they are is they're the family tree of genetics. They're what allows us to make really good predictions about inheritance moving forward with certain families. So what they are is they're a genetic history of a family over several generations, or as far back as people can go. Sometimes pedigrees are only 3 or 4 generations, others 5, 6, 10, 11 generations back. With pedigrees, the further back you can go with a trait in a family, the more confident and better that you or a genetic counselor or a scientist can be in a prediction about inheritance moving forward in a family. So they allow geneticists and scientists to analyze the inheritance pattern of different traits throughout a family. So pedigrees are all symbols. So it takes some time and now how do you read a pedigree? So let's just break down just the symbols first. So whenever we make a pedigree, we have males and females. Females are represented by a circle. Males are represented by a square. Now it's important to recognize that just females and males are not colored in. Okay, so they're unshaded. Normal males and females are unshaded here. So males and females. So then what we got is if a couple is married, if a male and female are married, or if they have kids together, not necessarily marriage, but if they have kids together or offspring together, we draw a line connecting them. And then siblings are shown through here. So this couple had 3 kids who are all related to each other. We have 2 females and 1 male. So this male, because they has 2 sisters, this female has 1 sister and 1 brother, and same is true for this female. So that's that's just the basics of pedigrees right there. There are some other symbols you may appear, especially if people are twins. If they're fraternal twins, we just draw a line connecting them down like this, kind of at the same branching point. So with regular siblings, we drew down in each separate branching, but for fraternal twins, we draw the line from the same point from the couple above. And then identical twins are the same way, but then we draw a line connecting, kind of a triangle is what we draw for identical twins. So what does a pedigree look like? Well, it looks like this. This is what a pedigree looks like. This couple had 3 kids, had a male and 2 females. This couple had a kid, has 3 kids, two males, 1 female. The male or one of the males of this couple married one of the females from this couple. They married and had 3 kids together. And that's all the pedigree is saying. So we can say that, so the parents of these 3 kids are these 2, and then the grandparents of these 3 are up here. So that's all a pedigree looks like. Now, pedigrees allow us to trace back genetic traits and the inheritance of traits. So whenever we do that, we then fill in or shade these boxes a little bit differently. Okay? So if it's affected, so if a person is affected by a trait, whatever trait we're trying to figure out or look at, we shade in the full circle. So the full circle gets colored in. If a female is an X-linked carrier, remember that females are the only ones that can carry X-linked diseases. Males cannot carry X-linked diseases. If a male has an X-linked disease, they're going to be affected by it. If they're an X-linked carrier, it's a circle female, which is a colored dot in the middle. If they're an autosomal carrier, so if the trait we're looking at is not found on the X chromosome, then we just vertically shade in half of the circle or square. Females or males can be autosomal carriers. And then if going back, if a person is deceased, we just or if they died, we just draw a line through it. So pedigrees allow us to determine the inheritance pattern of different traits. So your first step in figuring out the inheritance pattern is the trait autosomal or X-linked? The way to figure that out is if most of the males in the pedigree are affected by the disorder and you don't hardly see a female affected, it's most likely X-linked. If it's a 50-50 split between males and females, or real close to 50-50 split, then the disorder is autosomal. So what does that look like in the pedigree? Well, it looks like this. This is the pedigree of England's royal family. So it shows, so that in the royal family, there is hemophilia, saying back to Queen Victoria. So, and it shows just the inheritance of it. So if you look through all throughout here, right, and we know that hemophilia is X-linked. So we see that it's only males that ever are affected or phenotypically show hemophilia. It's only males here. No females ever show it. There are a couple of them that carry it, but they never show it. So there's your clue that this is an X-linked trait because only males show it. So looking at this chart, is it autosomal or X-linked? So we look at who's affected by it. So we look, there's 1, 2, 3. There's 3 males that are affected and 3 females. So since it's a 50-50 split between males and females, the trait is autosomal. If you look at the next one here, there's only males that are affected. With it only being males affected, there's a really good chance that this trait is autosomal. So that's how you determine it. Really, you look at who's affected. If it's mostly males, it's going to be X-linked. And with a 50-50 split between females and males, then it's autosomal. Now, that being said, it's all down to probability of traits. So you could have different traits that may or may not, that's hard to determine. That's why the further back in generations that you can go in a pedigree when you're constructing a pedigree, the better information and more confident in your prediction that you can be. So, yeah. So determining if a trait is X-linked or autosomal is pretty straightforward. The next step one is determining if a trait is dominant or recessive. So if a trait is dominant, what we're going to see is one of the parents will have the disorder, and we're going to see it appear in every generation. If it's recessive, if the trait is recessive, then neither parent can have the disease, and we can see it appear in the offspring. So it can skip a generation. It's kind of what we're saying in there. So we can kind of see it disappear from a generation and then reappear in the next generation. And then so let's look at some traits here. This is showing the inheritance of a certain, I forget what trait it is in a family, but we can see that it is a dominant trait because parents have it, kids have it, parents have it, kids have it. So we see it appear in every generation. Since it appears in every generation, it's dominant, right? So there you go. See it appear in every generation. This is a dominant trait. Is this trait dominant or recessive? Well, we look, parents have it, kids have it, this couple married kids have it. So we see it appear in every generation. This is a dominant trait. this trait is a dominant or recessive. This trait is actually recessive because if we look, it does skip a generation because this couple and this couple here, none of them married, right? None. This trait isn't shown in any of these offspring. Now it's like, well, what about this male over here? He shows the trait. He's affected by the trait. He is, but he married into the family. So because he married into the family, we don't know what his pedigree is. So here's it skipping a generation right here. There's other proof of it as well. Here, neither parent is affected by the trait, but we see it appear in the kids or in one of the kids. That the only way that's possible is if the trait is recessive. Same thing here. Neither parent had it, but we see it appear in the kids. So now what's interesting is this pedigree doesn't show, you know, if it's autosomal carriers or not. But the thing is by looking at it and by knowing that, by figuring out that, oh, well, this trait is recessive, then we know that, well, then both of these parents have to be carriers for it. They're not affected by the trait, so they're not homozygous for the trait, but they are carriers for it because the kids have it. So if we were filling in this pedigree, we would go back in and shade these in, only half of the circle, half of the square to show that they're autosomal carriers. So it's recessive. Is this one dominant or recessive? Well, neither parent has it, but we see it appear in the offspring. So it's recessive. So in summary, pedigrees, they're family trees that allow us to make predictions about the inheritance of a certain trait. All right? And just to begin to interpret a pedigree and to determine the inheritance pattern of a trait, you determine if the trait is autosomal or X-linked, and then determine if it's dominant or recessive. Because traits can be dominant or recessive for both X-linked and autosomal traits. It doesn't matter in which order you do it in. It doesn't matter if you figure out if it's dominant or recessive first, and then autosomal or X-linked. It doesn't matter which one you do first. You figure out if it's dominant or recessive first, and then autosomal or X-linked. So there you go. There's pedigrees. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time. Bye.